Awesome. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the podcast for season 2 of Released. So, Ashley, could you tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and kind of your situation growing up?
Definitely. So I am from Cedar City. I lived there most of my life. It's a small town. It's growing a lot now, but it's I definitely see it as a small town, which I really liked that kind of feel. We're kind of like in a bubble, which is nice. I have 3 siblings and 2 awesome parents. We did a lot of music growing up. So my dad is the band and orchestra teacher at our high school. And so we all learned an instrument growing up, and it's just so fun. And my family, we get together and we jam out and play songs
What
together all the time.
instruments do you play?
So I started on violin. Now I mostly sing and play guitar, ukulele, piano, kind of. But yeah, it kind of varies, and so it's a lot of fun. That's just kind of what we like to do.
That is awesome. I did piano and then
Awesome.
guitar. Not good at either,
Okay.
but I did find that guitar was I could accelerate faster and start playing the songs I wanna play a lot faster than
Yeah.
piano.
That's true. That's what blew my mind about guitar, is my dad taught me guitar, and he was like, "Once you learn, like, these 4 chords, you can play any song." And I
Yeah.
was like, "What?"
Have you
It
seen that
changed
Ed
my world.
Sheeran, interview where he's like, "These
No.
4 chords, I can play any pop song."
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, I have heard of
And
that.
then people
Yeah.
are just shouting out names of songs, and he's playing them and
Yeah.
singing them.
It's the best.
Yeah, pretty dope. Okay, okay, and so you were in Cedar City. Music was a huge part of your life growing up, and then you got called on a mission. Could you tell everybody where you served?
Yes. So I served in California in the Bakersfield mission. Um,
When did you get called?
I got called 18, I think. I left summer of 2018, came home December 2019.
Nice.
Yeah,
Before Christmas?
right before
Oh,
Christmas.
nice.
So it was just like a week or two before Christmas, which was really perfect.
That is perfect.
Yeah. Bakersfield is like the armpit of California is what they call it.
Really?
So
Dang.
it's a really great place. It's like super like a desert, very dry and hot. Um, just a very weird, strange place, but I loved it. I loved the people there. It
Mhm.
was it was such a good time.
Yeah, you just kind of romanticize your own mission, even the bad parts, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So you're on your mission in Bakersfield. Was there anything on your mission that kind of prepped you for coming home or prepped you even in a bad way? It might have given you false expectations coming
Mhm.
home.
Yeah, so on my mission, I one of my biggest trials of my mission was dealing with anxiety. So I actually got diagnosed with anxiety in the MTC, like 4th week into my mission. And so that was something that like I struggled with throughout the whole time, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I just was kind of trying to figure things out, and I I had been told that like a lot of people get are more prone to like anxiety or depression when they're a missionary,
Mhm.
just because of like the stress of everything and the lifestyle change and all of that. And so I was told like, well, when you get home, like you might kind of recover from it. You'll probably be fine.
Could I ask what
Mhm.
prompted you to go, like, see if it was anxiety and, like, get diagnosed?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't really have a choice. I mean, and I'm glad. I just started experiencing a lot of symptoms like I couldn't like focus in class. I would get like really dizzy and like foggy in my brain. And I was like, I can't be a good missionary if I'm struggling like this. And I had symptoms like I couldn't really eat, and so I stopped eating, and my companions were noticing that something was off, and um, I actually ended up having a really terrible panic attack one night,
Mm.
which was really, really scary. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And for people who don't really know what that is, it's just like kind of your body just giving out, and just it's so like consumed with like stress and anxiety that it has to find a way to just kind of process the energy. And so a lot of the symptoms include like your whole body shaking. People think they're having like a heart attack usually. Her
Mm,
heart's pounding, your mind is racing, that kind of stuff. And so I experienced that, and it was so scary because I'd
that is
never,
scary.
like, I didn't know what was going. I literally thought I was
Was it
dying.
just like that night in the
Yeah.
MTC and
Yeah, I was
all the
laying
girls were like,
yeah,
what do we
like
do?"
I was laying in my bed and everyone had gone to bed and I couldn't fall asleep for some reason. And my mind was just racing, and my heart started to speed up, and I finally was like, is anyone awake? Like, I don't know what's going on. And one of the girls in my MTC district, she got up out of bed and immediately ran over and started praying for me,
Oh,
which was so sweet. And like it was just what I needed. But um I think in that moment of darkness was when I was like, wow, I should get some help, like this is not normal, and it's so much harder when like you're not with your family and
yeah.
people that you love. But like I like get emotional thinking about it because I feel so blessed to be where I was, even though I wasn't with my family. That would have been kind of nice to like be with them when I was suffering so much, but like my MTC group was like the best blessing of my life. Those girls, we were super close. And we all got along and we all loved each other. And so like being able to have that support from them and the constant love and prayers that they were offering me was like just outstanding. Like if that was my mission, that 4 weeks, like I would be forever changed.
Yeah. That is something that's so beautiful about love is it's not promised and oftentimes it's not expected. And so when it's given like that, when people reach out and support you and they see you need it, it makes it that much more beautiful and appreciated. So after that panic attack, um, were you just talking to the other sisters and they're like, you should probably go see the MTC nurse or something?
Yeah, we ended up calling in like one of the there's like a medical person, I guess, on call at like, all the time. And we called them, and she came in and she was like, "You just had a panic attack. Like I I'm going to invite you to just get some rest tonight, but then go see one of the doctors in the morning." And it's funny, I didn't know that like all these resources were at the MTC. So I wish that like I hope more people know this, but like there are doctors, there are counselors, there is like a whole community of people just like helping missionaries, and that's all they do all day long.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was like, okay, cool. Like it was honestly it was it was a blessing because normally if you like have anxiety and you need to go get taken care of, you have to get a doctor's appointment, you have to wait for weeks to get in. Then they're like, you should probably see a therapist. And then you have to wait for weeks to find a therapist. And then you
Yeah.
gotta like find one that you can afford. And it's this whole mess. But for me, I was like, I went to the doctor. A couple hours later, I walked across the street to my counselor, my therapist, and like I was just constantly going back and
Wow.
forth between appointments. And it was so nice.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah,
was
that
so
is nice.
convenient.
The church has gotten so good at being efficient with everything.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed with anxiety, and throughout your mission, you were told that it's a very common thing on the mission. Um, did you see it affecting you on the mission? Did you have intrusive thoughts about it?
Definitely. I think that's kind of like the hardest part of anxiety is just like the thoughts, the racing thoughts. And so it affected my mission greatly. So I tell people I was called and served in Bakersfield, and I did, but I was actually first called to serve in the Philippines.
Oh
That
wow.
was my letter that I received in the mail, Quezon City Mission, speaking Tagalog. And I believe now, like I kind of mentioned earlier, that the reason I was as called to that mission was because of this MTC group that I was put in.
Mm,
Those were my sisters and elders that were going to the Philippines, and they were like the biggest support group that I've like ever had. Um, but once I was diagnosed and they decided that medication would be the best thing to help me, recover the quickest. I was told that I probably wouldn't be able to go to the Philippines. And
Was
so
that like earth shattering? Were you heartbroken?
yeah, because I had spent the last like whatever months, like 5 whatever months, just like learning about the Philippines, like being so
Fallen in love
focused on
with
it.
it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you go to the MTC and your teachers are speaking Tagalog and you're just like, this is so cool. And like I
Yeah.
felt like I kind of picked up on the language pretty quickly and like it was so fun. And yeah, I'd already fallen in love with like the people and the culture even though I'd never been yet. And so I was pretty bitter about that for a while. They were like, you can either go home and get better, or you can get reassigned to the States.
Mm.
Um, and I was just like, no, like that's not how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
um, but with some time and with some prayers, I was like, you know what? Like I've come this far. I'm not going home. As much as
Mhm.
that would be great. If this is God's plan for me, then I just have to trust that. And so I got reassigned. I got a new mission call a couple weeks later. Was called to serve in Bakersfield. I had to totally leave my MTC class, which was so
Yeah, I
sad.
see, guys.
Yeah, I had to learn the gospel in English. um,
Man.
so I was in the MTC for a long time. Um, anyway, sorry, I forgot what the actual question was though.
Oh yeah. Did the anxiety bring intrusive thoughts about you as a missionary, you on your mission, and now knowing that you were reassigned, did it affect you, I guess, like even just on in the early stages of being in Bakersfield, did it make you feel like this is not where I'm supposed to be?
Definitely. Yeah, that's the really tricky thing is like I'd be on my mission and you hear all the time that like you're called to a specific place for a specific reason, which is true. But I'd have thoughts like, Is this really where I'm supposed to be? Like, is like this is not my mission. Like the Philippines is my mission.
Mhm.
Like, what's my purpose here? Yeah, I guess something that comes to mind is like I I kind of defined myself as like the missionary that has anxiety. Like I didn't really tell
Mm.
everyone that, but that's like I was like, okay, like I'm on my mission and I have anxiety, and that's like that's that was like kind of like my identity, which is
Yeah.
terrible,
Yeah,
you know?
that's a sad
But like
way to see
and
yourself.
yeah, but it's like that's all when that's all you're thinking about and like it's such a heavy like trial. It was hard for me to kind of look outside that and be like, "Wait, I'm like so much more than that."
Mhm.
Um cuz I remember just like with that perspective, it feels kind of hopeless. Like how am I supposed to spend the next year and a half like surviving first of all a mission, which is hard enough, and second of all dealing with anxiety, which I don't really know what I'm doing. Like
Yeah.
I did like I got to meet with a therapist a few times and that was really really helpful. But like I didn't have a lot of skills or tools to like cope with it. And I remember the second I sat down with my new mission president when I got to Bakersfield, um the first thing I told him, I was like, "Hey, like I'm not supposed to be here. Like I was called to the Philippines and I don't know like why I'm here." And like I struggled with this anxiety thing in MTC and it was really hard, and like I just remember him like so kindly and patiently just being like, "It's literally okay. Like it's fine." And he opened up to D&C where it talks about I don't know which scripture it is, but it says where he's talking about the missionaries being called like to the east or the west, it mattereth
Oh,
not.
yeah.
And he was like, you are like a special type of missionary where you could be anywhere and still bless people's lives. And I think that applies
Wow.
to everybody. Um,
That gave me chills.
yeah.
Dang.
And I was like, oh, okay. And so I think like a huge theme that I had to learn is just like having trust in God's plan, because it doesn't always look like the plan that you want or
Yeah.
that you think it's going to be. But just like now I look back and I'm like, wow, like everything happened the way it was supposed to. And I learned so much and I had so many blessings pouring into my life on my mission, before my mission, after my mission, like, and I am so much stronger because of what I experienced and because of the trials that I went through.
Yeah.
And so that was like a huge theme, was just like trusting in God's plan, and just he throws you a curveball and you're just like, all right, like bring it on. Like
Like,
this
bring it
is
on.
like, if I don't, God knows better than I do.
Mhm.
Like I have no say in this. I'm just here. I'm going to let it happen cuz
Mhm.
God is good. We know that.
Yeah. Actually, I've been having kind of experiences that have been making me think about um that scripture in DNC when Joseph is in Liberty Jail and God's like, all these things will be for thy good, and if thou endure it well, God shall exalt thee on high. And I've really been focusing on the if thou endure it well part, because I think that it does go back to what you were saying, just like trust and just straight up. Sometimes you just have to like endure it. Let the waves
Yeah.
of like depression, anxiety, sorrow, grief, anything just hit you. Don't react and just look to God
Mhm.
and just be like, don't let me fall over, because that's all you can do. And then at the end of it, like you're like, dang, if I reacted in a different way, if I lashed out at people, if I started justifying being a bad person because bad things are happening in my life,
Right.
I would not get these amazing blessings or this amazing realization that I have now. Do you
Yeah.
feel like you were able to get to that point while on the mission where you're like, hey, God is good and I am where I'm supposed to be?
Definitely. Yeah. It's so, yeah, it's interesting, and I love what you said, cuz I had times where I spent some of my energy being angry at God and bitter. But now I look back and I'm like, why would I spend a second of my time being angry at God when I
Yeah.
see like how good he is, because we know he's good when we sit
Yeah.
down and think about it. But um, I definitely had moments where, I was able to kind of come out of that and just look back and be like, wow, like for example, just me questioning why would God call me to the Philippines if I was never actually going to go to the Philippines? Well, because he knew that these sisters that were in my MTC group were like the most amazing people ever, and that like we would get along and we would just have so much fun together, and like I still like am in touch with them because they're incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so just like you look back and you see blessings like that and you're like, wow, like that was brilliant, good work,
Don't know
Um
how you planned that, but that's great.
it worked out. And then I did have quite a few experiences while on my mission in Bakersfield where I would just have the spirit come in and be like, this is why you're here, and I would make sure to write those down. I should go back and read them because I can't think of any specific ones now, but I definitely remember having just times
Mhm.
where the spirit's like, hey, like, you are here in Bakersfield, California, of all places, in this ghetto little town, and this person needed to hear what you just said to them, or this person needed your example today.
Mhm.
I think also a big something that missionaries don't think about sometimes is sometimes you're not really called to a mission, but you're called to your companions.
Mm.
And that's something my mission president shared with me too. I think in the beginning of my mission, or maybe in the middle, but he mentioned to me, like, I think that you are going to bless your companions, maybe more than like some of the people you teach. And I was blessed with amazing companions. I don't really think I had one that was like terrible, awful, like we never got along. Like I was very lucky in that
That's
way.
good.
But I definitely know that I had some companions where they've shared with me that like I was able to be a blessing to them and be a good example to them, and just like showed love to them when they needed it the most. And so I think that's something we forget to think about, is like the companions that we were with are a huge part of our mission and our conversion story and our testimony and their testimony.
Yeah, seriously. Man, I can actually tell that I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. And so I can see that. I could see you being like such a good, easy, and like just nice companion to have. Especially if they had a hard companion before you, they'd probably be like, oh, Sweet.
it's, a, it's a relief. Yeah.
Yeah, thank goodness. Man, that's awesome. Okay, so you served an amazing mission, sounds like, and you had awesome experiences. Coming back from the mission, did you have any expectations of what that would be like? And did they match with reality?
Yeah, that's I think that's the problem right there is we have expectations and we just that that's why it never really quite goes the way we want it to go. Um so I had been told in the MTC when I was with meeting with doctors and stuff that my anxiety probably wouldn't be as big of a deal when I got home. And so I took that as like, okay, like I'm going to struggle with this for a year and a half. I'll figure it out. I'll get home. I'll be healed. I'll be cured. It'll be great. Like I'll get through it, right? And I so wish that like I hadn't been told that because that's definitely not true. I mean, maybe for some people, like for sure it does bring out more anxiety, more stress when you're on a mission. And then
Mhm.
some people get back to their normal life and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're fine." But for me, it was definitely not the case.
Yeah.
Anxiety is just like it's something that I've struggled with, and it like I have overcome a lot of it, and I'm definitely probably better than I ever have been this year.
Looking back, did you notice that you struggled with some symptoms before the mission?
Yeah, like we never like put a label on it. It
Mhm.
was never like said, but there were definitely some things like in high school, just like weird
And now that you know
situations.
more, looking back, you're like, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay."
yeah, and, you, like, have things happen and you're like, "Is this anxiety?" I'm, like, Googling it, like, "What
Yeah.
does this mean?" But you don't wanna, like, say what it is because then it's real, you
Yeah, yeah, you
know?
don't wanna diagnose yourself because 'cause you're like, "Oh, dang it. Now I
Exactly.
know."
Yeah, so that's kinda what it was, and so, in the back of my mind, I was like, "You've kind of dealt with this, like, since high school, and so it's not just gonna go away," but I didn't want to, like,
Didn't wanna believe it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, I think, too, it's tricky getting home because for me, like, my last, like, 6 months of the mission were really amazing, like, I was on a high, just, like, so happy, I think you finally kinda figured out the mission life, like, you're just cruising along and things are great, and while I did have a lot of ups and downs with my anxiety, I think even the last 6 months I was better than I ever had been anxiety-wise, and so I was, like, excited to come home. I was coming home right before Christmas. I felt, like, pretty ready to come home even though I knew I was gonna miss the mission.
Mhm.
But I think it's so hard going from, like, that spiritual high and then coming home and then being like, "Oh, shoot, like, what am I supposed to do?" Like,
Yeah.
it's just, like, so
You have all this momentum, and then
yeah,
you hit a wall, and you're like,
exactly.
"What?" Yeah.
Exactly. But then you see people that are home and you're like, "Oh, well, like, they figured it out." Like, they are, like, studying their like, pursuing their dream career, and they're married, and they're dating, it's great. And so you get home and you feel like it's gonna go that way, but it's not. Like,
Yeah.
it's not ever that easy.
Yeah, yeah. There's the few people that it works out like that, but
Yeah.
for the majority, it doesn't, and when you're looking at those few, you think that's everyone,
Totally,
and so
totally. And I think that also led to some of my anxiety. So, like, my big thing that I've been thinking about this a lot too is just like we see this timeline that we're taught our entire lives about what your life should look like as like a righteous member of the church. And
Mhm.
it's like you go to high school, you graduate, you go on a mission, you come home, you get married, you have kids, you go to BYU, like that kind
Yeah,
of stuff. And like that's awesome. And that's a great path to be on. But you think that when you're not on that path, that you're doing something wrong or that
yeah,
you're not like as righteous as someone else. And I just like that's so not true. Like
yeah.
this timeline is it's not a big deal. Like and and I think that's one thing that I wish that I kind of would have known or would have taken more thought into cuz I felt like I was so behind because I
Mhm.
got home and I was just like this lost little puppy, and I was just wandering around aimlessly. I had no purpose. I couldn't figure out like what I wanted to study or like who I wanted to date, and like I just felt like a disaster. And I was like, there must be something wrong with me, or like I'm not
Yeah.
doing something right because like I'm not like following that path, or like I'm not in like this line that I feel like I should be in.
Yeah, but you also got home 2019 December,
Hmm.
and then 3 months later,
Yes.
COVID hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Oh
that
man.
must have, like, spun everything even more out of control because 'cause you're already feeling left behind, and
Exactly.
then suddenly a worldwide pandemic happens, and you're like, "Now I can't do the things
Literally.
like
Yeah.
date and
Yeah.
go to school, like, physically and all this
Hmm.
stuff."
Yeah. Talk about feeling lost. Like
Yeah.
we all felt lost in 2020, no matter what season of life you were in. Yeah, that was like definitely really hard because I came home, had Christmas, was with my family. It was great. I had the time I needed to be with them. I moved up to Utah Valley, lived at my grandparents' house, and I was like finally trying to like get things going, get that momentum back up. And then yeah, COVID breaks out, and just like where do you go from there? It's
Yeah.
so scary. And I don't and then of course back to like struggling with anxiety. That's also around the same time that like a lot of my anxiety started to come back. Not necessarily due to the pandemic, but I mean, I don't know anyone who didn't struggle with some sort of like mental health issue when the
Yeah.
pandemic happened. I think it's just something we all kind of had
When
to
you're
face.
locked indoors, you can't see people's faces, you can't
Yeah.
interact, give people a hug. There can't be, um, no side effects to that.
Right.
There's gonna be something.
Yeah, and you think about being on a mission and doing the opposite. Always
Yeah.
talking to people, hugging people, like
Mhm.
just being like connecting with people and loving people, and then just suddenly not
Yeah.
doing any of that.
Man, lonely.
Yeah,
It's so lonely, and I'm
very.
sure everybody knows what that feels like, but did you have a moment that kind of epitomized how you were feeling? Like, I don't know, you were at your grandma's house and you're just sitting there and realize how lonely you were, or did you have one of those moments that just epitomized that?
I think it was a combination, or it was little moments that kind of added up over time. And I think that's kind of how anxiety works, and that's kind of how it was even like in the MTC as it was kind of building up to, is you just have little thoughts or little experiences. Um, for example, I started to have I started to get symptoms again, similar to what I faced in the MTC. So I was freaking out. I was like, "Oh
Yeah,
no,
no,
like not
please.
again." I'd lose my appetite. I wouldn't eat very much. I'd have just like brain fog. I couldn't really focus. And then I was in school and like trying to find a job and trying to figure my life out, and I felt so overwhelmed. I think like my biggest um symptom, I guess, for my anxiety when I came home was just overwhelm.
Mhm.
I was so overwhelmed with like everything that I had to do. Like I couldn't even clean my room.
Yeah.
Like I'd get
Yeah.
home and I'd be like, like I don't know where to start. I was just paralyzed.
Yeah.
And so I'd like crawl in my bed and just cry. And like I was like, and then again, like I just didn't want to admit it because I was like, no, like I refuse to have this trial again.
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with this again.
And the shame comes back because you're like, "I was on cloud 9
Right.
just a few months ago. I was
Hmm.
killing it. I was the hardest worker. Now I can't clean my room." I had the exact same story,
Yeah.
same feeling. And I'm like, if I took a shower, I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Yes."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
congratulate myself. I'm like, "I did it. I
You
took a
did
shower."
something.
But it's
Yes.
like but it's such a chore, and then when you realize how hard of a worker you were before,
Mhm.
it just introduces that shame that you had
Totally.
before.
Totally. Yeah, that's a huge thing, and it's so, like, sad that there's so much shame around mental illness, which makes it hard. Um, I think that, like, I wish that I had reached out to people sooner. I think that's, like, one thing I think about often is I wish that I would have just admitted sooner. Um, I think I always say this, the first step to healing is vulnerability. Just telling someone that you are like struggling, you're dealing with something, um, that is what opens all of the doors to you healing and overcoming it. Um, and it took me a long time to finally just be like, hey, like I actually remember the moment now that now this like answers that first question, but I was crawled in my bed because I was so overwhelmed. And I was like, I'm gonna just like open the Book of Mormon. Haven't done that in a while.
Mhm.
Maybe that'll help me feel better. And I like texted my grandma because I lived in her basement, and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I was just like, something is wrong. And she like came down and just gave me a big hug, and I just cried, and I was like, I just can't, like, I just don't feel like myself. I can't function. I can't do what I should be doing as a normal human being. And like I feel like very grateful that I lived with my grandparents at the time because they're so loving and supportive, and they definitely helped me get through a lot of it. But like I just like ah, why do we wait so long to tell people that we're suffering?
I don't know.
Because I needed therapy so bad. I needed friends. I needed support. And like people aren't going to know that unless you say something.
Mhm.
So that was a huge thing.
That's awesome that you ended up doing it. And
Yeah.
awesome that you went through it, but and it is awesome your grandma's response. And I've found that like you'll be surprised with how fast people want to help when you're being vulnerable. And like it's scary, no doubt about it, because there could be someone that'll throw it in your face. But for the most part, I think you'll be surprised by their response and their love.
Absolutely.
And so, would you say that that was a big turning point for you when you reached out to your grandma?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was, and I remember kind of from that point on really seeking like a therapist and getting a doctor's appointment and kind of just taking it easy and just being like, it's okay if I can't get everything done today that I need to get done. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna just kind of focus on myself and figure that out. Um, and I asked for like priesthood blessings a lot of the time just to feel some peace about it. Um,
From like your grandpa? Nice.
yeah, which was really
Grandparents, they're
great.
the
Yeah.
greatest.
Yeah, yeah, I know they are. um, and it's interesting because then I started to learn that like maybe my anxiety was a kind of hereditary, like maybe it came from my grandparents a little bit.
Mm.
And so my grandpa's like, I'm sorry if I gave this to you. But it's
It's
just
like
like
my
you get
bad.
like clarity, and it's like, oh, like I'm not just like crazy. Like it's just like something in my genetics. So
Mhm.
you're like, oh, like it's okay. Like just like another thing that like people deal with, not because they did something wrong or because they don't know how to handle their stress. Like it's just like part of the human experience sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, once we realize it is part of life and other people are feeling it too, that reduces the shame right there.
Yeah.
Once we are vulnerable and people show us love, that reduces the shame right there.
Hmm.
Like the shame really and the just anxiety in general really grows and thrives in secrecy.
Yes.
And so when you
100%.
think that you're the only one that's crazy and has this brain fog and can't get yourself to even start picking up your room, then yeah, it's going to stay that way and
Yeah.
get worse.
Yeah. 100%.
Would
I
you
also I also kind of wished at that time that I just not even open up to just like, parents, grandparents, whatever, but even just like friends.
Mhm.
Like that's a time when you really need just a good support system of just like people your age going through the same stuff. Cause like kind of what you said, like I felt like I was dealing with it alone. I was like, I'm the only 20 something year old dealing with anxiety after my mission. Like,
Yeah.
no, that there's no way.
Yeah.
Like,
Majority of people.
yeah, no,
So,
there's so many people. And the more I talk about it, the more I learn that other people also struggled with it. So like I so wish that I had like reached out sooner and realized that like I was not alone in this.
did you have a ton of friends near you? at that time that you just didn't reach out to, or did you feel kind of lonely? Did you have, I guess, did you have the friends
Yeah,
to reach out to?
I did feel pretty lonely at the time. I didn't have like a ton of friends yet because I had just moved up,
Hmm.
to this new town and just gotten off the mission. And so I did have one friend though where she and I have very similar anxiety. So it's really good to like always like be talking to each other about things we're going through. And she also experienced a lot of anxiety on her mission. And so that was really good once I actually finally opened up to her and was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm struggling." She was like, "Wait, same."
And then you guys become like instantly like best friends.
Yeah, right, yeah. And we'd always been close, but like
Yeah.
that's like just something that always is like we always know that we can have each other's back even to this day. Like we'll call each other like, "Hey, I'm like freaking out right now."
Hmm.
So that's like that was a really special thing. I wish there was like a support group, like a weekly meeting,
Yeah. I think they
just
have
like
them.
really I bet
I'm
they
I'm
do.
sure they do. I haven't
Yeah, like
ever
the
looked into
emotional
it.
reliance or
Oh yeah,
self-reliant, like
emotional
maybe something.
resilience
Yeah, maybe there's
groups.
something like that, but
Yeah. In other ways of your life, did it affect, is it cool if I ask you about dating
sure,
and anxiety?
totally.
How did anxiety affect your dating life?
Yeah. That's such an interesting question and it totally affected it. And this is also something I didn't really share with a lot of people, but I you get home and you really want to like get into dating and find your eternal companion and that's a very righteous desire, but there is so much like pressure about it, which I think is one thing that can cause anxiety. But I think because of my just general anxiety, it was really hard for me to go on dates, period.
Mhm.
Like, it was hard for me to do anything that would make me slightly nervous. So like so anxiety is like fear, nervousness a lot of the time. And anytime I would get slightly nervous about something like normal that you like should be kind of nervous for, it would just trigger my anxiety and it'd be like, "Oh my
Mm.
gosh, like why like your stomach has you have this pit in your stomach, like your heart's beating really fast. You must be anxious." And it would just escalate.
Yeah.
And so little things like yeah, honestly, it's this is like not even funny. Maybe it is.
Let's
But
hear
like
it.
to me it's embarrassing that people would ask me on dates and I'd just be like, "No." 'Cause I'm scared. Like I just didn't want to have to like I
You were
couldn't
scared
picture
because you didn't know them, or you were scared you were gonna, like,
because
be weird,
I
or
didn't want to be on a date and have my anxiety come.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like that was like my biggest fear.
Mhm.
And so like I literally could not imagine myself like getting picked up by a person and sitting down at like a restaurant and me having to get through a whole meal
Mhm.
without being like, I don't have an appetite right now.
Yeah.
My heart's beating really fast and I
Mhm.
have all these thoughts and I can't focus and whatever. Like I could not
Dinner
fathom that.
dates for the first date, I don't know. I just
I
steer
agree.
away from them
Yeah.
because it's like you're sitting across from each other.
Yeah.
It's like an
It feels kind of
interview.
scary. Yeah.
You're, like, up on trial. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, do an activity. Like,
Yeah.
it makes
And
it
then it
easier.
eases the pressure a little more and you
Yeah.
can kind of like relax. That
Mhm.
would have been nice.
Okay. Well, I wanna get into how you got to the place you are now, because you have not probably not fully overcome anxiety, but you have gotten it under control to a point where you can recognize it when you're feeling it. You know how to, I don't know, just address it.
Yeah.
How did you get to that point?
Yeah. I'd say a lot of things. I definitely feel like the last like 3 years have been a journey for like my mental health and my well-being and my soul. Like
Yeah.
I I am a huge believer in therapy. I absolutely love therapy. Like I still use those tools all the time. Um I also have done a lot of like life coaching. I've had a few life coaches um which I felt like has given me like longer term results where I'm going day to day and like I can't remember the last time that I like felt anxious actually.
Wow.
Like it's crazy. Like me now, I feel like Ashely 20 what year is it? 2022
Yeah,
version of
2022.
me is like totally different person from
Wow.
2020 Ashely.
Dang.
Like it's
That's amazing.
crazy.
What do life coaches do different from therapists?
Yeah, so it's kind of a fine line, but um therapists primarily do help people who are in the lows of mental illness, depression, anxiety, ADHD, whatever. Um the way I heard it explained pretty well is they're in a place where they're like low functioning or like can't really
Mhm.
function as a normal human being,
Yeah.
and they help you get to a place where you are functioning
Mhm.
as a normal human being.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
and then life coaching, you take someone who is like pretty generally well functioning, and you put them in a place, you get them to a place where they're higher functioning, where
Mhm.
they're living more of their full potential each day, and they're discovering their purpose, and they're so connected to their spirit and to their mind and their body that they can just like it's like you do a lot of mindset work where you practice rewriting your thoughts, which is something I learned in therapy. And I actually think that the reason why my coaching has when I've been coached, why it's like stuck so well with me was because therapy was kind of like the foundational knowledge
Mhm.
of it. And then once I got coaching, I caught onto it really fast.
Yeah.
And then like you just practice different like rewriting patterns in your brain and catching patterns that are like, oh, like my anxiety brain says that, but would Ashely as a daughter of God really say that kind
Mm.
of thing? And just like, I just feel like over the years I've gotten a lot better at that and a lot faster at doing it. And now it's just like second nature. It's like it's easy, it's natural to just like have more empowering higher thoughts that are more like coming from a place of inspiration rather than anxiety and fear and darkness.
Mhm. Did you ever have a moment where you handled it and then you look back and you're like, "Dang, like 2 years ago, I would have been a mess."
Yes.
Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, let's see if I can think of like situations. I mean, even just like little things like even going on dates now or doing things that like would make me nervous or like scared. Um I guess one that comes to mind is I still cannot believe I did this, but I was with some friends one weekend and I didn't know them super well, but I got asked to go and help do like a video in southern Utah, and they were like, "Yeah, we're like getting paid. Like instead of getting paid, we are able to go on like this little excursion thing, this rock climbing excursion." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Or it was rappelling. They said rappelling. I was like, "Okay, I can try rappelling. Like never
Yeah.
done it before, but like cool."
You're taking your camera
Yeah,
and
or like I
everything?
like used his camera.
His
I
camera?
didn't really know what I was doing. I was like I'm like beginner still, but it was super fun. We did this little video project, and then the next day like in return for doing the video, we were given this little activity that we could go on. And I like get there. I didn't know what I was signing up for, but I got there and it's called like Via Ferrata, I think. I don't know if
Mm.
you've heard of it.
No.
It's you'd have to look up photos, but it's like you're in the canyon. So there's a cliff and there's these metal like iron bars and it's like a ladder. They're set up like
Oh,
a ladder and then
yeah.
they go sideways and then they go up the whole side of the mountain. So you're literally just on the edge of the mountain and you're climbing on these
It's
little ladder things. It
terrifying.
was so scary. Like when
Oh,
I tell
man.
you like 2 years ago, no. I would
Yeah.
not have even set foot and I would have been like, this is cool guys, but I'm gonna wait here. Like, and then I would have been like, man, my friends think I'm so lame and like I'm so dumb. Like, why didn't I just try it? And then you're like in the thoughts of like,
Yeah.
beating up on yourself. But I was like, you know what? I have overcome so many fears for the last like 3 years. And this is pretty scary, but we have a really awesome tour guide. He assures me that it's safe.
Mhm.
And I'm just gonna go for it. Because you start to learn that when you overcome fears, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Heights is one of my fears too.
Yeah.
And so one way I've done that is cliff jumping,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is
See, I'm like,
terrifying.
ah.
But like I haven't done anything like crazy like 50-footer, but like I think the highest I did was like 35, but absolutely terrifying for me.
Yeah.
But after I did it, I was like,
You're like,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
unstoppable.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And so I was like, okay, like let's go for that. Like we're gonna have that feeling again, that motivation that I can do anything.
Yeah.
Because anxiety says no, you can't do that. Like that's ridiculous. This is crazy. Like this is scary. I'm trying like your brain is trying to warn you that danger is approaching and you should absolutely do anything to not do that thing, you
Yeah,
know?
seriously.
And so I just like I was like, I've been really focusing on like being present and just like having, like I said, like having thoughts that are more inspiring and more empowering instead of like beating myself up. And so I I was kind of slow. My group was very patient with me, but I did it. I went up and I just focused on where my hands were and where my feet were. I didn't think about anything else. I didn't turn around and look at the view. Like I,
Yeah.
I was looking at the rock the whole time. And I was just like one hand at a time, one foot at a time. Then you're going sideways. And then you gotta like take big, like a really like big leap over to the side and you have to not roll down the rock. And it was terrifying, but like I remember we were on the last little stretch and I didn't know that we were close to the end. I thought we were like a fourth of the way done. I was like, all right, got like 2 more hours of this. Let's go. And my tour guide says, look up. And I was like, no, I'm not looking anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Totally.
he's like, like, I promise, just look up just for a second. I look up and there's one more stretch of a ladder. And he's like, that's the top. And I was like, wait, like the top? And he's like, yeah, that's the end. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I just like ran up that ladder and made it to the top. And I was like, wow, like I
Yeah.
just did that. And like 2 years ago, anxiety me never would have done that
Yeah.
ever.
And if for some reason you were in the middle of it 2 years ago, you would have had to have a helicopter come get you because you would have been
Literally.
frozen to one of the things.
Literally.
And
Yeah,
so,
that it
yeah.
would have been interesting.
Yeah. Well, if there was one thing that you could tell, or a couple things that you could tell a return missionary that's coming back home that struggles with some of the same things that you struggled with, what would you tell them?
Number one is just like, don't be afraid to reach out to people. If you're suffering, if you are stressed, whatever it is, like, don't be afraid to reach out. Like, your bishop wants to help you, and your roommates, even if you don't know them very well yet. Um, just opening up about things that you're struggling with. There's so much power in just talking about things that are hard and challenges that you're going through. Even that alone is like really helpful a lot of the time, can bring a lot of clarity. Um, Another thing that comes to mind, and this is something that I felt like came up on my mission a lot too when it comes to anxiety. I think we have this belief that when we're on our missions, if we are like reading our scriptures, saying our prayers, like working super hard, that like the mission will be easier and that will have more blessings. And like that's true in some ways, like you will be blessed for your work and your efforts.
Mhm.
But I kind of had it in my mind that like if I was being a good enough missionary, I wouldn't deal with anxiety. Like
Yeah.
God wouldn't let me do
God
that.
would God would bless me so I wouldn't have to.
Right,
Because I'm
exactly.
doing his work. So,
Exactly,
yeah.
yeah. And so I was that person that said that prayer that was like, "Hey, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to like pray more, read my scriptures more. I'm going to like, do whatever and if I do that, like please take away this anxiety from me because I do not want to deal with that. I do not want to have this trial on my mission." It's funny, I had to learn that lesson twice because it happened on my mission, and then I was like, "Wait, that's not how that works."
Yeah.
Duh. And because I still had anxiety, but I was still a good missionary, and I realized that both could coexist.
Mhm.
Um, and then I get home from my mission, and I'm like, "Hey, God, like, I served an awesome mission. I did my best. At least I think I did." Or you're like, "Did I do my best?" Maybe it's because I messed up here, and that's why he's like, you know, lightning is striking down on me now. And you get out of the habit of your like miracle morning stuff and your studies and everything, and I'm like, okay, if I get back in the habit of my scripture study and I'm doing better, like if I just am a more righteous, more spiritual person, then he'll take my anxiety away. Because I'm not supposed to deal with this after my mission. That was just a mission thing.
Mhm.
But that's like that's so not how it works.
Yeah. That thinking is just, sorry to say it, but wrong.
Yeah,
So,
it's brutal and it's not helping my anxiety because then I'm
mhm.
like beating up on myself for not being good enough or righteous enough. And like I say this all the time, like you are not struggling with anxiety or depression because you're not good enough or you're not righteous enough or you're not perfect enough. Like that's not how it works
Mhm.
ever. Like, and if I had just kind of taken some time to sit down and be like I am first and foremost a daughter of God and he loves me unconditionally no matter what I do, how my mission went, whether I failed at my mission or succeeded, or no matter if I am having this trial of mental health struggle, like uh, he still loves me and that is like the most important thing. And because he loves me, perhaps he's put certain trials in my life so that I can turn to him. And I think about my anxiety now and like I'm genuinely grateful for it. Like I
Mm.
have said prayers now where I like thank God for my anxiety, which
It's
is
so
full
funny.
circle from the first prayer,
Yeah.
the
You're
first
like, "I
prayer that I
hate this. Why
mentioned.
are you doing this to me?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I literally have been grateful for my anxiety because it it has put me in a place where I feel like I can be very empathetic and more just aware of people around me. And I can notice people if they're like being fidgety or like acting weird. I'm like, oh, I wonder if they're just like feeling triggered by something right now.
Yeah.
Like, or they're like feeling uncomfortable in a room full of people. Like maybe they're trying to find an exit because I used to do that at parties.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
you
Or
know,
just excuse yourself to the bathroom for no
yeah,
reason.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Like,
and go hide in the
yeah.
bathroom for a second. Absolutely. But yeah, I think that's like a huge blessing now is that I've just become more empathetic. And then those friends that I have now who like are suffering in the same ways, like I can help them and I can offer what I know and what I've learned in therapy or in coaching and just be like, "Hey, like this has really helped me. Let me like support you in this." And then yeah, and just I think I have come to a point where I'm grateful for my trials the last 3 years because I have been almost forced, not like forced, but I have been so led to have to turn to God, like,
Mm.
because I can't do it any other way. Um, I literally have had experiences where I've been so close to God, and I've literally felt Christ in the room with me, like, holding me and being there for me. Because anxiety is it's not easy and it's a struggle that like God knows we have to experience as mortal humans and we're very broken sometimes and it's not easy, but the the amount of growth I've had and the amount of time and experiences that I've had to come closer to Christ because I've felt so broken has like has meant everything to me. And a lot of my testimony comes from those times of being so broken and lost and afraid because the cure for fear is love. And the answer, the key always is love and compassion. And Christ is the only one that can truly offer that to us so fully and so purely. And I think that has just like that's changed everything for me. That's my relationship with Christ. And I'm so, so grateful for that.
Wow. Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and testimony with all of us and being vulnerable enough to talk about it. So, thank you so much for coming on.
course. Thank you for having me.
We're not going away.